let's talk about this idea. So, brother of mine, this is your boy Adeleke, and so a brother of mine and I was chatting recently, and he dropped a bomb on me, a conceptual bomb that I had never really thought about before. And once I started thinking about it, I realized that he may be genuinely onto something in this thinking, right? And the simplicity of his question to me was, why do we have such a negative connotation with the idea or the word racists? And I stopped for a second. I was like, well, racist, and I stopped for a second. I say, you know what? I had to deal with that question too in a serious way. Now that you bring it up, if I just replay my experiences, right, as a student, as an activist on university campus, and at one point I considered myself a race man. That was the terminology used in the 60s and the 70s for the people who wrote scholastic work supporting the growth and the benefit of black folk, right? They called him race man. You know what I'm saying? He's a race man. So race man was considered to be a scholastic warrior. You know what I mean? It's you write that up. I'm a race man. Oh, okay, yeah. What's up, brother? How you doing? Power to the people. That's what that was. And then over some time, the FBI had their way with it. They murdered a couple of race men and sent another few in jail because of some, whatever the reasons, the politics of that. I'm not going to go into that for this right now. But race man was the thought, not racist. And racist was preserved or reserved for particularly white racists with negative intentions. So that way we give a specific connotation to the word racist, set with the idea that a black man can't be a racist. And I've been called a racist a couple of times, and I've said, no, I'm not a racist. I don't have the power in order to implement racism. And in my studies as a scholar, I actually began to accept that as fact, right? I don't have the power to assert racism, but the fact of it is of course I have the power. Whether or not I do it or not is a totally different question. Whether or not I assert that power based on race doesn't mean I don't have it. I may not be asserting it. It may not be woven into the fabric of everyday life like it is when we think about white racism, but it's there. It's clearly there. The power to be racist for a descendant of Africans, an indigenous descendant, for any human being, the power to be a racist is whether they have any degree of economic power or any time they choose to exert that economic power as it relates to their race or as it impacts another race, is them being racist, whether that is in a positive benefit or for a negative benefit. So then when I think about it, and here's the caveat. Here's the part that convinced me early on what he was saying. He said, we don't have the same kind of negative connotation for a scientist or an economist, or, well, maybe we do have this a negative connotation for a plagiarist, but it's a different kind of connotation. But even a plagiarist or a pianist, a saxophonist, we don't have a negative connotation for a saxophonist. If a person plays the saxophone in a nasty, ugly way and they make really gross or, skin-crawling music with the saxophone, we may have a negative connotation about that saxophonist or that performance done by a saxophonist, or saxophonism being used in a way to produce something that was undesirable or unpleasant. But that's what happens with race, right? There's people that use racism or the science or the knowledge or the understanding of the expertise of the inner workings of race. There's people that use that knowledge, skills, talents, abilities, etc., for good and for bad or evil or whatever you may want to call it, for the benefit and everyone that uses their racism, not everyone who uses their racism, there are people who use their racism, right, to the benefit of their own race, right, and still are not producing the negative thing. Perfect example, Chinatown, Ethiopianville. Now, Ethiopians, some people might want to call Ethiopians a race or whatever, but it depends on how you want to do that. And the same thing with Chinese. Can you call all of Chinese a race? No, not really. They're Asian. You know what I mean? Ethiopians are, North Africans or Northeast Africans. But those are communities around that we know of, and how these people aggregate their resources to the benefit of themselves and their happiness, their heaven on earth, right? Ultimately, whenever a race of people use their racism, their understanding of their race and how their race interacts with the rest of the world for the benefit and the propagation of their race, they're being racist. And it's not always a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing. And so now it makes me go back and say, wow, have I missed? Ironically, that same day, I was listening to a group of gentlemen, 8 Hands. It's a group of gentlemen that work together. They're all educators, PhDs. I don't know if they're all PhDs, but they're all educators, and they work together. They have a podcast or a YouTube video channel. Pretty awesome stuff they've been talking. But I saw their 100th episode when they had Killer Mike on there. And their 100th episode had Killer Mike and the conversations they had. But and it was a great conversation. I listened to the entire podcast, or the entire video, but close to the end, one of the brothers, I'm not sure which one it was, but one of them makes this comment. He says, "Don't try to take my opportunity to be a racist. don't try to steal my chance to be a racist," or something like that. He says that, he made that point earlier. And I was like, when I heard it, I was like, it threw my head back a little bit, like, I think I understood what he meant when he said that, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't dwell on it very much. And then later on that same day, this is how things tend to work, or have been working for me more recently. Later on this same day, I end up in this conversation with my god brother, Ikao Tura, and Omo Obatala Ikao Tura, right? This guy points out this idea that racist is not in itself a negative thing. Sips his tea. Well, slurps his tea. So, I'm rolling with that idea. And I'm going to develop my version of the idea. Now, I'm giving credit to my brother because it was a couple of things for that day that really brought my attention. One, like I said, the elder gentleman, he's not my elder, probably my peer, but the brother, the PhD with the 8 Hands, made an awesome comment. Then my brother turned around and doubled down on the, why the negative attitude towards racism. And I'm dumbfounded but enlightened at the same time. I think I just broke through something, and I'm happy for it. So it's going to remind me to change the connotation of racism. Anyway, this is your boy Adeleke. You got anything on your mind, hit me up. We're going to grow these podcasts up. I'll talk to you later.